Here now with more reaction, author of the great new novel he's put out, Rifleman, good friend of the program, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. Let's talk about what happened here and why this is important. You have known about Soleimani now for many years.
4 big points here. Number one, all you've been saying about him is spot on. This is the guy who's part of the heart of darkness. He's evil. He's 62 years old when he was killed the night before last. And he was working as a member of the radical regime that took over in Tehran as a youngster. So he was a young 20-some-odd-year-old when all that was coming down in 1979. He was radicalized by that. He used the opportunity to make sure that he could join the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which he did. And then in 1998, he helped organize the Quds Force. One of his mentors had been Imad Mughniya, who became the head of Hezbollah in Lebanon. You may remember Imad Mughniya was the man who murdered Robert Steedham in the back, shooting him in the back of the head aboard flight TWA 847 when it was on the ground in Beirut. So the nurturing that he got from the worst of the worst is the kind of thing that built him into being the kind of person he is today. Number two, this was a target of opportunity that was extraordinary. It's the consequence of just what you've been talking about in terms of good intelligence gathering. And number three, it's important that we have bases in the region from which you can launch remotely piloted aircraft, so-called drones. And that's because they tracked this guy taking off in either Syria or Lebanon. We don't know all the facts yet. And they knew that he just landed at the airport in Baghdad. They knew that he was getting in that 2-car convoy in the middle of the night. And that's obviously a high-value target. And then the clearance came from the President of the United States, fire. And they did. And looking at the pictures, I know there's people that say, no, the cars were blown up from inside. It was the Israelis did it. The bottom line of it is you can look at those vehicles. They weren't blown apart. They were blown in, probably Hellfire missiles. There are some questions I'd like to have more answers about. But the bottom line of it is this was a target of opportunity you probably weren't going to get again for maybe months or years. Number four, the world is a far better place without him because of all the things that he's been doing with his Quds Force since 1998. Get this. He built the Hezbollah operations up well beyond what Mughniya imagined when he was the head of it in Lebanon. He also duplicated it in Syria and Iraq. Some of those that died in those cars with him were the guys who headed the Hezbollah-type organizations that the Quds Force had been setting up. So Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and of course, we've all forgotten the Houthis in Yemen and the attacks, you mentioned it a few moments ago, the attacks on tankers coming through the Straits of Hormuz. When you look at what they've been able to do and lift the burden off the American people and the people all over Europe, the price of oil has gone up. Just imagine what would happen if one of those tankers attacked by the Quds Force and their, quote, nautical elements, a single one of those tankers going down will drive the price of oil up through the roof. So at the end of the day, the world is a far better place because of the decisions made by the president acting on the kinds of information that we know they had to be putting together with time enough to get on station a remotely piloted aircraft. And my guess is, looking at the pictures, probably 4 Hellfire missiles.
All right, Colonel North, thank you. As